So, hello and welcome to another weekly crazy Backyard Peace Project coaching session. We're here for you. Everybody shows up every week for you to have these big conversations so that it's a starting point for you guys to have these big conversations and to shift your consciousness and to start thinking of things from another perspective. So this is where we dive in, and it's always great on a Wednesday. Always look forward to the juicy conversations. So guys, I've just this morning recorded my session for the July Summit. And the July Summit is all about forgiveness. So I decided to do my session on reflecting on my journey through forgiveness. That's my cat causing chaos. Yeah. I need a lot of forgiveness on my cats. But anyway, my journey through forgiveness, because it's something that I have struggled with over the years. And so I've sought out, obviously, different authors and different teachers to try and help me through forgiveness. And there's a few things that I'll bring up today, but the first thing I'll mention is the work of Colin Tipping. I don't know whether you guys are familiar with his work. So he wrote Radical Forgiveness and Radical Self-Forgiveness, amongst other things. And that was a really profound shift in my life, this radical forgiveness. So in a nutshell, radical forgiveness is not like traditional forgiveness because it's saying there was no wrongdoing. So traditional forgiveness is like, you did wrong, but I found it in my heart to forgive you, or whatever it is. And radical forgiveness is saying it's all orchestrated by a higher power. We label things as good and bad. And therefore, there is no wrongdoing. It's all there for our growth and evolution. So that's like years and years worth of his work in a nutshell, which is oversimplified for sure. But what it did for me is it freed me a lot in my journey with forgiveness, because as I unpacked it and I was thinking, well, okay, if everything's happening for my good, and if I see these people as the most radical, disruptive life coaches that I've ever come across, then I can approach this in a different way and I can access forgiveness more readily, knowing that this was meant to be in my life for me to proceed and me to grow and me to evolve into the person that I was supposed to evolve into. So that's helped me for sure. And I'll go into the other things a bit later on. But firstly, one of the things that was really present for me while I was doing my masterclass this morning, and I did speak about it in the masterclass, was I have been through some gnarly stuff, but compared to some of my clients, I've been through nothing. And so I love I love radical forgiveness and radical self-forgiveness. It's really been a massive influence in my life, but it kind of gets a bit sticky when I'm saying, from my place of privilege, I'm asking you to see the horrors in your life as divinely orchestrated, and we have to make peace of it from there. So I kind of know that there's a disconnect there from somebody like me who's lived a pretty privileged life, saying to somebody who has not lived a life of any privilege whatsoever, saying, hey, but this is all for your greater good. You just need to make peace with it. And although I do believe in the power of that, there's a complexity to that as well that needs to be acknowledged and respected. So I wanted to dive in and discuss it with you, another light-hearted topic for a Wednesday morning.
Good on you, Cathy.
The brain's thinking. Yeah. Forgiveness comes in lots of different ways, I would imagine. As you're saying, like, everyone's been through their own experience, and going, I guess, rolling onto that radical forgiveness is, where do you sit with that? And how much time do you spend? And this seems to be a big theme that's coming up for me at the moment, is time. Not so much in the chronological time, but where do we value it? And how much do we spend on being, annoyed at someone who's done something, or how much time do we spend on trying to psychologically understand our own habits and behaviors, and where do we forgive ourselves in circumstances where maybe we haven't treated people right or treated ourselves right. So it comes on lots of different levels there, but to me, it comes back down to how much time, and this is probably big learnings on understanding myself, is how much time do I spend being annoyed at the world, of things that are going on that I have no control over. And same goes if someone's done something to you do you have control over them, and where does that fit? And then as the sort of, I guess, the growth happens over life, is like the only thing that you have control over is your own responses, your own feelings, emotions, and behaviors, and how you think about things. So the growth, and it's not an easy one, to be radical, is to get into a place of what part and what is your role in the experience, and then what can you take away from that. And I'd imagine that would be part of the radicalness of going, how do I learn this quick so I can move forward? How do I value my time more and spend less on being annoyed at the world and the people, and then from there you can come from a place of more clarity and compassion, which is what we want to sort of spread out into the space, into the world, and make the most of our time, because it's not a long time. It's pushing closer to 50 now, starting to look into what's next, where is life going, and how does it all fit, and why am I still pushing different patterns that I've had my whole life. And so it comes into valuing every moment. And a lot of us say we don't have enough time to live, to that person's done this, or I'm stressing about that. It's like, well, value it. You've always got a minute, you've always got 2 minutes. You can always take some massive actions if you really choose to. And forgiveness is one of them. And that's where the radicalness is. Make it quick, move on as best you can, even though some of the horrific stuff's out there and that takes a bit longer. But there's a lot of little stuff that we hold on to for way too long, which restricts us from living fully. So it's like, where do we step into that? And where do you value your time?
Do you think it's the difference too between blame and responsibility? Like, we talk about, and I, particularly in my work with parents, when I'm working with parents and they've got to get over their own childhood or heal from their own childhood, and they all of a sudden realize that, because in normal psychology, we do a lot of understanding why our parents did what they did, where does that come from, what's the background, all of that sort of stuff. And it's great to understand, but it does a couple of things. First of all, it has us going, okay, well, I can't blame them for that then. And it has us feeling empathy or compassion for our parents. But the other angle to that is, as a parent, if you're then, if you are knowingly, or that even if you don't intend to, chances are you're probably going to hurt your own kids somehow. And that's if I blame my parents, then I have to take responsibility for the shit that I'm messing up, right? And that's a huge undertaking, particularly when most mothers have issues with their mothers and then they're mothering, right? So there's this cycle that kind of happens. But we can, I think personally, that we can go from blame. It's not about blame. We all come with the shit that we've got. It's about taking responsibility. And I have this movement around the mother-daughter mosaic, and this idea being that as a person, we come with whatever shards of glass and whatever pieces of tile that we were given, that have come down and that we've inherited. It's how we place those pieces of tile and glass, the broken bits, how do we place them for beauty? And it's about taking responsibility for placing those. And so I think when we can shift away from blame, and maybe, Cathy, I haven't read the book, but maybe that's kind of part of the ethos there, is it's not about blame so much as, all right, and this is what I've got. How do I take responsibility for making something beautiful moving forward? And how do I gift the next generation with something beautiful to move on from?
I love that, Philippa, I really do. And it's so interesting because it's actually a conversation that my eldest daughter and I had this week. And it's she was at university and she's finishing up and she's doing this last intensive, and she's planning a documentary. And actually, we actually think we're going to do it for the Backyard Peace Project. It's very cool. So we actually very excited.
Awesome.
But I won't tell you everything because it will reveal too much, and it's very exciting what's going on in the background. But it stimulated a conversation between us. Now, I have been very vocal about the fact that I've been proud of myself as a parent for disrupting certain patterns that have been generational. For myself and for my husband, we've both done the work because we really wanted to clear up as much of our stuff as we could so it didn't filter down through our parenting. But it was so interesting having this conversation with Sky, because she said, I'm so grateful for all of that, Mum, because I can see the dynamics, I can see what you've broken, I can see how differently you parent, I can see all of that. But these are the ways that it trickled down. And I was like, I was gutted. I was actually gutted, because my whole parenting journey has been to show up and be the best parent I could possibly be, to make sure I didn't make those mistakes, to make sure that I was creating a different environment, to all of those things. And yet still, some stuff got through, and it's not massive stuff. I mean, it's stuff that we talk about and I've apologized for, and I brought it. I mean, I'm the first to bring it up. But I thought, far out, I've been intentionally trying to change the narrative, and yet some things still pass through, those shards that you were talking about, Philippa, those pieces of tile. And I think because of the foundation of the relationship that I have with my children, they've been able to take those shards and make it into something beautiful rather than have it be trauma that's following them. But I kind of felt, and this is where the radical self-forgiveness comes in, because I was like, that feels uncomfortable for me. That feels really uncomfortable for me as a parent, as a mother, as their primary carer, that some things have slipped through the net that I wasn't even consciously aware of. So, but again, it's turning up with that 100% responsibility again, isn't it?
And it's not about perfect parenting, it's about present parenting.
Yeah, I love that. I just wanted to ask that, so I understood that correctly, Cathy, despite all the work that you've been doing with your clients and on yourself, and despite how freaking amazing you are with all the tools you've learned, you're still human. just to understand that correctly.
Don't tell anyone. But it's hard when you're my mothering journey has been such a profound piece of who I am. It's not been the entirety of who I am, but it has shaped me in so many different ways. And to know that despite all of my conscious, intentional decisions, choices, responses, this stuff still happens. And like Philippa was saying, you know, we tend to have to forgive our parents for certain things, for sure, because again, nobody's perfect. But then when it comes and falls on your shoulders, you're like, hang on a minute. No, I didn't get that memo. That is not what I signed up for. But unless we step into that with grace and ownership and the respect of how that affected our kids, then it has the potential to sabotage their growth and their evolution. But if we can say, hey, yeah, hands up, like, I get it, like, I'm so sorry about that. It wasn't my purpose, it wasn't my intention, but that happened, and I feel sad that happened, but I'm so glad you can tell me, and, you know, I'm moving forward, I'm going to be much more aware of that. But far out, it's a tough gig.
Isn't that the gift though, Cathy? The gift of when we mess up, we do it with grace. We honor that we're not perfect, and then we give them permission to make mistakes. You know, I think if we are aiming for perfection in our parenting, in our work life, in our relationships, we never make it acceptable for other people to make mistakes, and that in and of itself isn't okay.
So much pressure.
We have to be okay with our own mistakes, with messing up, with being imperfect. And I love how Judith says it. She calls it being flawsome, right?
Yeah.
Flawed but awesome, right? Like that's the gift for our and I think it's the one that too many kids don't get is that there's not enough parents accept responsibility for the mistakes and do it with grace. They beat themselves up, and then we end up with perfectionists and all the other shit, right? So I think that's the gift.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's giving them that space or support after they've failed, and giving them, as best you can, giving them some tools to work with that. And that sounds perfectly what you've been doing, and I'm sure we all strive to do as parents, is Cathy, that you've given them the tools to look at the situation and go, well, that didn't work, but I understand it and I can talk to you, as opposed to, I'm perfect, I've got to hide it and pretend that I'm better than anything in the world. And then the guilt and the fear and all the challenges come up, and then you're 40 years old and you're in therapy for the rest of your life because you're trying to figure it out. If you can give them the gift early on to realize that messing up and trying and challenging and stepping into the pain actually makes them better humans. It's where the gift comes from. Like the nice comfort is where everyone's stuck these days, and this is why there's so many problems, because everyone thinks it's got to be comfortable, it's got to be nice, and when it gets challenging, everyone's like, oh, hands in the air, not dealing with that, I'm going to run, or they're going to medicate, they're going to bury themselves, and so it doesn't get solved. And that's across the board. So the stepping into the forgiveness of that is give yourself permission to mess it up, like hard, because that will make your children even stronger. And it's hard being a parent, because it's like you want to be there and catch them every time they're falling and support them and I'll help you, I'll fix you, but help them with knowledge and wisdom and experience. You know, I've seen this with my son. He's going through some anxiety, like he's 8, and seeing him going through school and things like that, it's like I want to help him go, oh, support you. I was like, well, this is what I went through and this is what helped me, and now here's some tools that I learned if you want to use them. And now he's starting to catch on to those things, and the simple breathing stuff has been really effective. And you know, but it's helping him to, I guess, get to understand when and how to use his tools, rather than having to go for 20 years of tool making or tool learning. Let's help them now and help ourselves with that as well.
It's interesting. I didn't have biological children, but I had a stepson, and I met him when he was 5. And one of the things that I told him early on was he never had to call me mom, or I was not taking that place. You know, he has a mom, albeit his mom is bipolar. So there was challenges there, most definitely. But the one thing that I said to him when he was little is, no matter what you do, no matter what happens to you, what situation you're in, you can always come to me and tell me about it. I don't care how messed up it is, whatever. I'm always here to listen, provide guidance as much as I can. He's now 33. And it's interesting, some of the discussions that we've had, because different times he's looked at himself and he said, you know, well, all of my friends are married or they're in relationships. Like, have I missed out? And oh, I didn't finish my undergraduate degree. Am I a failure? And his dad had lots of issues as well too. And I always wanted to reassure him that this was all part of his learning of his life. And that, you know, at one point his mom was living with him, and he had to kick her out because of the things that she was doing in his apartment. And he said, I'm an awful person for kicking my mom out. I said, no, that's not your journey. That's her journey. You don't have to rescue her. So I think the whole thing is yeah, Cathy, you're human. But if we try to be perfect in our, and I'm not going to use the word parenting, I'll use the word guidance, because of my situation. But if we try to be perfect in our guidance and try to circumvent all the potential issues that could happen, or the experiences or lessons that they might encounter, are we doing them a favor? And I actually thought about that recently about my own parents, where they kind of left a lot of life learning lessons up to me to take from those experiences. And I mean, they weren't lackadaisical parents or anything like that. But when I really think about it, it's like, no, we think you're smart enough based on the guidance we've given you that you will figure out how to work through situations in life. And that's going to give you a lot of resilience to be able to handle situations. So, you know, I could be angry that they didn't maybe give me more guidance or mollycoddle me or whatever. But when I look back at it, I'm pretty damn resourceful and resilient because of some of the things that they just let me experience and work through.
Mm.
Do you think
Yeah,
some
no.
of it has to do with how much support we have to do these things too? Like, I think if you're taking on something like radical forgiveness or radical self-forgiveness, and you are alone in your experience and you don't have support from your village or your family or, you know, a therapist or whatever, that's so much harder to do, because one of the things that often happens is we get caught up in our own stories, right? And we lose perspective as well. So sometimes that's the gift of others in our space, is that they can give us perspective and they can help us work through our stories, and they can help us figure out, is this about me? Is this about someone else? Where did I get this? Is this even true? Like, you know, sometimes having, and I think a lot of people, and it's part of the beauty of this space, right, is that a lot of people don't have that support. They don't have a community and a tribe to help them get to where they need to go. And that's sad.
Yeah, I mean, Philippa, I was just saying at the beginning of the call, I said I'd wait till the recording because I didn't want to waste, you know, all the juicy bits. But I've actually had a bit of a confronting week. And I was saying at the beginning that I'm just blitzing my house right now. Now that sounds like really mundane, but it's not. It's actually life-changing for me, because for the last 22 years, my life has been in semi-chaos. So I've been raising these 5 amazing souls that have got massive personalities and, you know, huge stuff going on in their worlds. And my house has always been in slight chaos. And actually, that's not who I am as a person. I like calm. I like order. I like to open a drawer and there it is. I like to open a cupboard and there it is. And I've never had that for the last 22
Don't
years.
expect to find the scissors though, Cathy, because
well, I've just got a whole pot of scissors. I've got a whole pot of scissors now. And the kids came in and went, "Oh my God, we've got so many scissors." I went, "There's a pot for it now." And it was a whole thing. And it's taking me ages. Like, I'm still in the middle of it. I'm still going through everything. I'm chucking things out. I'm donating things. I'm selling things. I'm getting rid of it all. It's like a new chapter for me. But one of the most profound experiences that I had over the last week was, we've got in our house a huge display cabinet sideboard, because we've got a massive wall in one of our rooms, and I didn't want it blank, so we put a big unit up against it. And I decided to sort this unit out as part of this project, and it was chaos. I mean, the dining room table was full of stuff, and it takes so long because you're putting all these bits together in groups, and then you're finding a new home for them, and you're reallocating stuff, and you're chucking things out, and you're reorganizing. And as I was doing this cabinet, I realized how much shame I had. I had so much shame for this cabinet being so messy. And I feel quite emotional telling you, actually. I felt guilt, and I realized that for most of my adult life, while I've been parenting, I have had this shame, because I would look at other families and their houses would look so amazing and everything would be in its place, and you'd open the cutlery drawer and there was the cutlery. Like in my cutlery drawer, you had to dig. It's an expedition. Can anyone find a teaspoon? Do you know what I mean? It was like all the time. It's like that. And I had so much shame, and I didn't realize I had the shame until I was cleaning it up. And I reflected on comments that I'd had over the years, and little judgments that I'd had from other people over the years, and little put downs and little throwaway things, but that landed with me and stuck to me, right? Because I'm still going through my evolution, because I was worried that I wasn't a good parent, because I've never parented before, certainly not parented diverse children before. And so I already had that self-doubt that, am I worthy enough? Am I going to do this right? Am I going to mess them up completely? Am I going to show up the way that they need me? But one of the biggest things was I've never really brought anyone into the house because I didn't feel proud of the house. I felt shame. And if anyone came over, I felt shame about that. And, you know, it's always been hygienic. But if someone came over, the hassle of trying to get it presentable for other humans, it just wasn't worth it. Do you know what I mean? I was like, oh my God, we'll do it like once every 2 years. It was just super hard. And then this piece of radical self-forgiveness comes in, because I felt so sad that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying that for 20 years. And the realization that I had while I was clearing through it looks friggin' amazing. I'll send you a picture later. I can even send you a picture of my cutlery drawer, because there's only cutlery in it. It's amazing. But the realization that I had was, hang on a minute, I couldn't carry everything, because I was somebody without a support system, Philippa. I'm an immigrant, and my kids were such huge personalities, nonverbal, massive self-sensory stuff. When they were little, people tended to be repelled by us because they just didn't know how to help. They didn't know how to connect, or they didn't understand, and therefore they were scared of it. And so I was very lonely during those years. And I realized I put those pieces down to focus on what they needed. And I couldn't do both. And that was the piece for me where the radical self-forgiveness came in, because I suddenly realized it was a choice that I put that down so that I could be present and not so house proud that I wasn't allowing them to become who they wanted to be. It's taken me 22 years to get to that point. And I felt a lot of sadness with that, but I also felt relief in the acknowledgement of that.
You were so powerful when you were telling the story. There was a couple of really big sighs. I just want to thank you for sharing that. I can so relate on many, many levels. I had a similar thing happening after Rob died, and the house went to absolute chaos. Like it took me about 18 months to start addressing it. I just didn't know where to start. And it was also, I think I mentioned that in one of our talks before, it wasn't just mess for me. Everything had emotional attachment all of a sudden. You know, there was the last coffee cup, or the pile where his itinerary from his last flight was, and the last this and the last that. There were, like, everything had emotional attachment. It was really, at first impossible for me to even get started on it. And I eventually got a professional organizer in to help me with that, because she had a lot of empathy for my situation and knew how to navigate me through the chaos to finally work through it. And I feel I'm probably like 95% there. I don't know and don't think actually that my house will ever be 100%, because I live in it. It's not a display home. But there was this shift of acknowledging that, and, you know, the self-forgiveness. I felt so much shame, and I didn't have time for shame. I had a lot to do with grief. I didn't have time for shame as well when people came in, but I did feel it. When people came in, I could feel the judgment, even if they didn't want to, or whatever, or maybe that was me judging myself. And that is the one thing that I wanted to bring in from the very beginning when you started with this topic is the point of reflection. You know, when we think of forgiveness, I think it's really, really important to bring the reflection in and go like, okay, what can I learn from this? What's the reflection in all of this for both parties, you know, for those who are judging or who did something to you, to really reflect and go like, okay, what's my lesson in this? And what is there to forgive? Is it mine? Is it theirs? Is there a bit for both of us in this story? And it made me think of my godfather, who never apologized for anything. Not because he was an asshole, I'm sorry to swear here. He was the most amazing person, still is, like, he's still alive, and he's actually a very important male influence in my life after my dad passed. And then when Rob passed away, he came back in to really hold space for me. He's incredible. And to me, when it comes to self-development, he's an absolute guru, because he lived and breathed it for the last, I don't know, 50 decades and taught it. And it's really, there's not one book, I believe, on the planet that he hasn't read in the space of self-development. But that one thing I just never got. I just never understood why he didn't apologize. And he said, you know, when things happen, there's no time for forgiveness, apology, or whatever. There's just, why did this happen, or what's in it for me? What's the lesson? He only ever went to the lesson, and that was the one thing I could never really 100% agree on. I'm like, so if I'm standing there, you walk past and you step on my foot, you don't apologize, although you hurt me. Like, it's, you know, that simple, super simple thing. It's like, well, you know, there was always a reflection, and what's the lesson in that? And, you know, like, well, who said that you were standing in the right place, or who said that? And there was always that I didn't do it on purpose or whatever. It was always only about the lessons. And I, till today, still struggle with that concept, because I think apart from all the lessons, we can all look at reflections and lessons and what we don't need to learn from that. A simple "I'm sorry" can go a very long way. And people sometimes wait for that for their entire life and never hear it, you know, and then they hold on to that. So for me, there's the topic of reflection, there's the topic of letting go, and of course the self-forgiveness, you know, because you just need to let go of that when you're waiting for that "I'm sorry" all your life and it doesn't come. I've been in situations like that multiple times. So of course, with all my self-development background, it brought me to the space of who's the common denominator here, like, you know, maybe there's something about me that I need to learn from that I need to. And then people always went to this space of, you just need to let go of it. Just let go. If it was that easy, I would have done it, you know. So how do I? But I think what I want to get to, this is my sort of my third point about that, and I want to wrap it up there from my end, is the soul contract. That to me was something that came in big time when it came to my mum, and it really triggered that for me when you shared about your family before, Cathy. And I had quite a challenging relationship with my mum on and off since my upbringing, and we are at a good space now. And what changed it for me, what really triggered a big amount of healing, was the book Soul Contracts by Carolyn Myss. And to me, somebody handed that to me and said, "Oh, you need to read this for Rob." But I thought, I already know that Rob and I had a soul contract. I already know that. I really felt like there's something else. And I started reading the book. It's actually called Sacred Contracts, not Soul Contracts. And in the first chapter, I knew I had to read it because of my mum. There was this, okay, what was our contract in this? You know, why did she behave the way she did? And what did that make me? Who did I become through that journey? And all of a sudden I had a massive amount of gratitude that then turned into love, that then turned into forgiveness, that then turned into a better relationship. So yeah, that all came up for me while I was listening to you guys. A very light topic for today. Thank you.
That all.
As always. Yeah.
I think that's a great point you put into that, is the I guess it's the future focus, or the focus of looking at the past and what has it become for me now. Because as you're speaking there was a reflection that came up that I hadn't thought of for years. Was I spent so much time. I spent 20 plus years trying to solve a problem that I felt against my uncle or step uncle, whatever you call them. But years ago when I was a kid, so like I had a dream of doing a shaping surfboards at that time, and he's like, "You'll never amount to anything. You'll be nothing." And so I took that on board. Him being an influential, you know, adult, I suppose, in the family. But I felt like that was my reason for not succeeding or not getting better or always failing. And it wasn't until later on that I went through so much trying to solve the problem, fix the pain, and go through that sort of thing, that it took me to a space of, I'm just working so hard on someone else's, putting my energy, again, like my energy was going into trying to fix that problem or to work out why that happened. And then, you know, down the track, future, fast forward, kind of go into a space of like, And another part came into it, which kind of linked, was I remember seeing an Oprah show one time. She had a guest on there and they were talking about forgiveness. And they explained it well. It's like looking at the situation, because, and again, this is probably why time is the, I guess, the friend in this, is without the emotion in there, to say thank you for giving me that experience. So that forgiveness is thanking and being grateful for that experience. Thank you for giving me. So forgive. And that was I guess a key element within my learning and my growth, was I thank you for giving me that experience, because that put a rocket up my behind to get moving and actually do something with my life. And you know, screw you, because I'm not going to listen to you anymore. I'm going to do something. So it's those experiences where people challenge us, and us as humans, there's things that we may have done that might challenge other people or trigger other people, but that might be the catalyst for them to become better. So the forgiveness is in our lives, rather than to constantly have to fix. It's like, well, where does it help? Where does it give me my strength? Where do I step into? Where is my resilience stronger now because of? And it's like giving yourself that strength and that courage, and the shit you've been through in your life has now made you a better human being. And I think to share and to offer that as who we are is just to show up authentically. And that radical forgiveness is not radical without radical authenticity, because you know what you've been through, you know where you're at, and you know that everything is fitting, albeit sometimes sucks, to a point to get you into a better space so you can be here and do what you're meant to be here. And that is to experience life, is to serve, is to love, is to connect on so many levels.
Do you think some of that then comes back to being curious rather than judgmental, right? So when I'm teaching people about their emotions, because in our culture particularly, right, there's this huge judgment on emotions, that those emotions are uncomfortable, so they're bad, we should avoid them. There's all this judgment around that stuff. And I teach curiosity around it instead. Well, okay, I'm feeling this emotion, but what's it there for? What's it teaching me? What's my learning from it? And then and every emotion, I believe every emotion is there to teach us something, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whether it's joy or elation, it doesn't matter. They're all there to teach us something, even if it's, I want to do that thing again. I need more of that in my life, right? Or I need to not have that as much in my life, or I need better boundaries, or whatever it might be. But if we're curious about the emotion and we seek the lesson in it, then we can go, okay, well, if and when we know the lesson, we can then say, is that emotion still serving me? And if it's not, move it on and make some choices around that. But it kind of adds that level of, I think, being curious about life in general, and about our emotions, and about the situations and the experiences that we've had, rather than being judgmental around them. I think it's just a nicer place to come from anyway, right? Like, it's so much less work if you can just be curious. And I, you know, when we're stepping into our new selves too, you know, as we do our healing and we become different people, I like to show up and think, how am I going to show up today? You know, I never know, because I get to choose every step of the way. So, you know, with the exception of drawing, which I suck at so bad. I can literally not do a stick figure without messing that up. But apart from that, and I'm okay with that, but apart from that, I'm like, how am I going to show up today? Am I going to be better today at this? Am I going to, you know, and particularly when I did my healing with TRTP a few years back, all of a sudden I started showing up differently with my parenting, with my relationships, with all sorts of things. And if I'd have expected more of the same as what there was before, I think I would have created that. But I was curious because things kept happening that I wasn't expecting. And I'm like, oh, look at me. That's new. That's interesting. I just think it's a much nicer place to live from. And the curiosity then, if we apply that to other people in our life, we can go, I wonder why they're showing up like that today. I wonder why they are doing that today, or why they did that back then, and just be curious rather than judging.
Yeah,
I love this so much.
Philippa,
And staying with the play on words where you had with forgiveness before, when you said that, in my mind, I was like, wow, how beautiful is that when then curiosity becomes a cure. I love that. And it's such a good word. Yeah, sorry, Cathy, you go.
Sorry, I was just going to say, adding on to what Philippa said, which is so great. One of the other things I wove through my masterclass this morning was Ho'oponopono, which has helped me massively in my life. So Ho'oponopono, for those who aren't familiar, is it's a prayer basically, and the way I say it is, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. So if ever I come across somebody or a situation that I'm really, really struggling with, for me, I Ho'oponopono it. And even when I'm working with clients, when they're quiet and they're processing, I'm doing Ho'oponopono in my mind. So I'm going, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, just to help shift the energy, help with the healing. And for me, what the Ho'oponopono prayer means is, I am that I am. So instead of approaching somebody with judgment, approaching them as, if I had faced those same circumstances if you had faced, if I had had those exact same experiences, if I experienced the same amount of trauma or rejection or heartache or whatever, I cannot 100% say that I would not have done what you have done. I am no better than you. I've had different experiences than you, and I have to see the potentiality in me of what you have done if I had been in those circumstances. So the Ho'oponopono for me is just leveling the playing field. It's like going, I see you, I'm capable of that myself. I can meet you where you are. I have compassion. And although your actions have hurt me, I understand the place where it's come from. And so that has helped me a great deal in my forgiveness journey, is by saying, well, I've had a pretty privileged life. I haven't faced those circumstances. And if I have had to do that, I'd have had to harden in areas that I haven't had to harden. I've had to survive in areas I haven't had to have that survival. And so you can't be going around judging and criticizing, because you don't know. You just don't know. And that, and as I said this morning, it's not that I'm going to welcome that into my experience. No, I've got really firm boundaries around what I'll accept into my experience and what I won't accept. But I can release that person, that friendship, that relationship, that experience, release it to the light with compassion, love, empathy, and a hope for healing.
Such an important point, Cathy, is we do forget or don't take a moment to think about what that other person has been through. I'm observing that within my family right now, sort of extended family, and my niece and nephew, and the anger they have towards their mom, certain things that went on when they were children and stuff like that. And she was married to my brother, who is no saint in himself. But, I said to both my niece and nephew, because they're like, oh, mom, mom throws everything out of proportion and, it's all about her. And I said, you're not thinking about what she's been through and how overloaded her nervous system is. And, she just turned 70. I said, she's dealt with a lot in those 70 years. You don't suddenly turn that around because you've started doing the work. That can take a long time to heal. So I said, I'm not dismissing maybe some of the things that she did, but at the same time, yes, you guys have anger around certain things, but we still need to take a moment and step back and say, yeah, this person's done a lot of work. They've been through a lot of stuff. The nervous system doesn't just reset itself because we've decided today we're going to start doing the work. That's a whole healing process in itself as well, too. And that's one of the things that I try to remember, and I'm not perfect at it, but when somebody's reacting, or even when I'm reacting, what's going on in my nervous system? What's going on in their nervous system that's making them show up that way? And I mean, then you add on everything else that's going on in the world, right? Never mind what's going on in our lives, but just the energy in the world that, you know, so many people's nervous systems are completely overloaded. And so we're all dealing with a lot of stuff. And it's hard. It's hard to remember that because we can live in our bubble and it can be all about me. But I do try to remember that.
And that's really, again, bringing it back to why we're here in the Backyard Peace Project is because we believe that it starts with us. We believe that it starts in our homes, in our relationships, our relationship with ourselves, the relationship with our families, and just building on the points. And especially, Marie, when you were saying about your godfather not apologizing, it's being able to reach through to the person where they are, not where you are. And we had this again last week in the house. And this is another amazing parenting moment of mine. I'd had a massive, massive day. Like I was hugely exhausted. And I got to the end of the day, dinner's on, happy days, house is full of 7 kids, great. I mean, kids, they're taller than me now, but yeah, I'm like, hey, listen here. But anyway, I just had a glass of wine. And so that means, you know, that, you know, I'm about to be bra off, I'm in for the night, I'm having a glass of wine, I'm done. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, that, don't ask anything of me, I'm off duty. And something happened between me and one of my sons. And here's the thing. I honestly thought it was no big deal. Like it wasn't on my radar. It wasn't. And I'm pretty good with sensitivities. I'm pretty good with who's feeling a bit, you know, and I'm always helping each other. I'm like, hey, they're feeling a bit sensitive about that. Don't mention that again. Or they need a little bit of support around this. So I'm pretty good at managing that. But I had a glass of wine and I had absolutely no concept that this was an issue whatsoever. So I said something and my son had a big reaction to it. And I was honestly like, what just happened? I was clueless, absolutely clueless. And I'm not going to go into the details for privacy, but I turned to the girls, meaning Sky and my son's girlfriend, and I went, did I just mess up? And they both went. I was like, oh, do you know what I mean? It's like at the end of a really long day. And I was like, what happened? I don't get it. And they unpacked it for me because they had the third party perspective where they weren't involved and they could see it from both sides and all the rest of it. They could see it from my side, but they could see it from his side. And I said, do I need to apologize? And they went, and I just went, I hate apologizing. and they were like, we know. And it's not that I hate apologizing, it's hate that I have to apologize. I hate that I've messed up to that person, so I'm going to have to make amends. I don't like that piece. I don't mind apologizing. It's the fact that I have to apologize that I don't like. So I'm throwing myself around the furniture with this glass of wine going, oh my God, am I really tired? And so anyway, I ended up going to his room, having a conversation. And you know what, guys? He was really upset over something that I swear to God, it was like, pass me the milk. Like it was that non-event to me. But to him, it really meant something. And we ended up having this really long conversation and we unpacked a heap of stuff. And I obviously apologized. And I said, I really did not see that at all. I just did not understand that was where you were. And I really apologize for not being sensitive to that and blah, 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 still drinking wine. And I'm so glad that I managed to do that. But I could have gone, don't be ridiculous. That was nothing. But that would have damaged our relationship long term. But it's hard when you're like, I'm tired. I've about to take my bra off. I've just had a glass of wine. I don't want to do this right now. I can't believe there's drama when I just wanted to ease into the evening. But that's just the way it was. And so I had to take that on board and show up in that way. And I was annoyed with myself for having made the bloody error in the first place. but it's, as you know, it's meeting that person where they are. And I think that's also really important, that to us it might be, you know, you could easily gaslight and go, that was nothing, like, get over it. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was really nothing. But to them it meant something.
Yeah.
Well, I had a similar
And why do these conversations always happen? Sorry, why do they always happen at like 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning? That's yeah.
Or just as you're about to drop them off for school and everything was perfect up until that one moment, and then you're sending them out the car door and going, like, and then, you know, you don't get quite that full circle on things. And it happens because we all have our own perspective, right? We all have our own story that we're telling. And it's really interesting. I learned a very valuable lesson. I reckon it was probably 16, 17 years ago, and I may have shared it with you before, but her name, I was lucky enough to live around the corner from the beautiful Sharon Maloney, who does some beautiful work in the birth space and in women and you know, menstruation and the journey of sexuality. And she, I had been confronted by a couple of friends who, you know, I was doing a lot of political work at the time, advocating really hard for consumers, and they felt that I was rather like a bull in a china shop. And I didn't take the feedback very well. I was gutted. And you know, in that process, I was lucky enough to talk to Sharon, and she said, you know, your sole responsibility is to figure out what you own in that space. What do you own and what is theirs? Because there's going to be two pieces there, right? What's yours? Because yours is yours to take responsibility for, to grow from, learn from, shift, heal, whatever you've got to do, that's yours. What do you own? And really be honest with yourself in what do you own. And then whatever you don't own is theirs, and you just hand it back with love and let it not be your thing and go, that's theirs to fix. And I get to be who I am. And and you know, it has changed everything about the way I receive feedback since then, but also how I sit in situations and experiences, because I want to know what's mine and what I own, but I also am equally aware that I cannot change somebody else's stuff for them. And I mean, I can guide, but I can't do it for them. They've got to step into that, right? We can't empower anyone to do something that is theirs to do. The whole idea of empowering someone is if it's mine. If I empower you to sign something for me, that's because it was mine to sign and I've given you that. But our own worth, our own person and our own power, that's not ours to give, that's ours to take, if that's, you know, so we can't do it for other people. So those two concepts alongside each other had me going, okay, well, I can take responsibility for my stuff. I can give you back your stuff. And then if you want to be empowered, you can take responsibility for your stuff. But I'm owning my own empowerment and I'm going to do that work. And yeah, both of those pieces I think really helped me in terms of other people's stuff as well, and their perspective and their story. And we do want to apologize. I think the whole apology piece, you know, I love that you had that story, Cathy, and I'd love for you to walk away with a different, rather than I hate having to apologize. Well, you made a mistake and now you get to give the gift of an apology.
It's another human element. I'm like, come on, guys.
Right?
Don't keep telling me that.
But it's a gift. It's a gift to be able to give that, I think. Perspective.
But also it's so great what you were saying, Philippa, about other people owning their stuff as well, because even within that restorative conversation, some of the pieces I was like, that's your piece.
Yep.
That's your piece. I've got my pieces here. That's your piece. And that was a good conversation. And we do have those good conversations. Like my kids are really good at owning their pieces as well, which is great. But it reminded me what you were saying about its quote I saw when it said, I'm not intimidating. You are intimidated by me. And that's just a beautiful equation of what you're saying, is that you know, you can be in your power and you can speak your truth and you can be kind, and people go, oh my God, you're so intimidating. No, I'm not. I'm being kind. You're intimidated by me, and that's your stuff. And so it just reminded me of that quote, which fitted really well.
I love that, Cathy. I'm going to put that on my wall.
It's so good, because sometimes, you know, that's sometimes a bit of gaslighting, and sometimes like, don't be so bright because it's making me feel uncomfortable that I'm not stepping into my light. Like, yeah, well, you go and put some shades on and go and, as Lisa Nichols says, you put some shades on and let me do my thing, and you go and do your thing. You know, so that's interesting as well. So yeah, I think that's really important when it comes to forgiveness, of making sure that we're in integrity. We know what our pieces are. We take responsibility for our pieces, but we don't try and take on everything. And because one of the things my kids and I have been talking about phrases dealing with difficult people, which happens a lot at school. And one of my favorite phrases, which is probably a little bit passive aggressive and not the greatest parenting moment again, but you know, I just say, you know, we say, so you're saying you're 100% right, and just hang it there, because nobody's 100% right. Very, very rarely. Like there's shades, there's different colors, there's different things. You know, and how did you want me to feel when you said that? Is another great one that my kids are using at the moment, because there's a lot of stuff going on, and just putting it back, just giving it back, giving that piece back. How did you want me to feel when you said that? Could you repeat that, please? I'm not sure I heard you right the first time. Like, commit to it so I can hear it. You know, I'm recording it, you know, whatever. But, you know, making sure that we're in our integrity, but also giving those pieces back is part of their growth and their evolution. So that's really important, as long as we're showing up and doing our piece, I think.
That's so good.
Okay.
That they're doing that, because so many of us can have that freeze response, right? When something hurtful is said, and we're just kind of like, and then we just hold on to it. So it's great that they're working on that ability to be able to respond.
Yeah, and respond rather than try and justify or convince or anything like that, because one of my kids does go into that mode because they're very heart-centered and they want to belong and they want connection and all of the things, and so they can go into this spiral of over-explaining and trying to, you know, and I'm just like, don't, darling, just stop, breathe, and just hand it back and see what they say. Because I think we've become in this such a fast-paced society where you know, people say things without thinking, and there's a lot of that with social media and things, a lot of what we call keyboard warriors. When you think, well, would you actually say that to their face in person? If you would, then fair enough, but if you wouldn't, then be quiet. But to have that pause and sometimes hold space and reflect back to the person what they've said to you. Like, did you actually mean, what was your intention there? How did you want me to receive that? Do you know what I mean? It's like a little bit of accountability coming in, where we just, instead of reacting or anything, just putting it back and just being a bit of a mirror, I think can be quite powerful.
It's such a great question. How did you want me to receive that? How did you want me to feel when you said that? That's amazing. I'm going to put that into my tool belt.
Yeah, got it there. Okay, so an amazing conversation again. Thank you so much. Are there any last words to wrap this up that anyone would like to share? Any last pieces?
Thank you.
Good.
Peace.
Peace, baby. Yeah, and I'll be sharing more parenting tips next week. How not to do it. Oh my gosh. All right, guys, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.